value PFPs because this is more of a collector mindset. So there's nothing that, well, the overall thing component that I have here is there's nothing that can stop these things from going, you know, from one or whatever point nine to 5e, right? I mean, it could. If people like the art, there's only 2,000. They know who Snowfro is. They've seen squiggles. Why not? Right? You just collect because you like the artist. Am I too far off? What your thoughts are? Or
It's a bit of a tough collection. Um, and sorry, I just hit the record button to so we can share this out afterwards. So we're talking about the Snowfro collection from Velocity Pass. This collection, it I think a lot of the movement and the appreciation that's happened is really on the back of just who Snowfro is. There is some there is some interest in the collection. You know, there are some traits and some variability. I think that stands out and makes it um, attractive, but it's pretty basic. So it's gonna take a little bit more, I think, for this to appreciate. Um, when I talked about it initially and where I thought maybe it could reside, I thought around the 2 ETH mark. It's still possible it gets there, but I think where it's at now and that 1 ETH mark, maybe 1.5, that's kind of where I place it. I don't know. It's Snowfro, right? And Snowfro, specifically because of the great success of Chroma Squiggles, it just it stands so high above the rest in the terms of a collection and that 10,000, etc. And this is kind of the next you know, uh, kind of more recent piece there for him, but I don't see it getting as high. Certainly much or anything above two, but it's interesting, and I think maybe if there's some interesting embroidery and that catches on, maybe then people decide that it's a piece that they have to own because of the embroidery, and it becomes a piece of what it is. And I think that's was kind of the interest and attraction of the Chromie Squiggle, was using it as a signature. So there are some things there that I think maybe it can kind of excel at, but overall I don't know if the what it is resonates as much, other than it kind of getting some kind of influence push, etc. So
okay,
that's my
let me ask you this.
yeah.
Let me ask you this, right? Before uh, squiggles were anything, what were they apart from just random squiggles? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like just
No.
before, because when I looked at it right back 2021 with art blocks, everything was hot,
Uh-huh.
right? But you just look at the screen and really you can do that. Your kids can do that, right? It's not really that specific, right? So when I look at the art actually of Snow for a new collection, there was a lot of resemblances with racing and cars, and I think it's Formula One or something like that. I don't know really what the
Yeah.
actual concept behind this, but I've seen a lot of art collectors within the space saying that the art itself is actually complex in nature. Even though obviously, yeah, there's a bunch of lines, but some of the art pieces, some of the NFTs are actually much more detailed than others, right? So wonder if from that perspective, complexity is actually worse.
Yeah, the complexity is there. I, there's one part of Chroma Squiggles that works for them, is the fact that they were really kind of they were the OG art blocks, right? They were the first kind of piece of generative art to to kind of exist and take off, and at least in the art blocks form. So that stands out. The art, you're right, is just a squiggly line, but I think there's something that is kind of interesting and attractive to that. Maybe because it's price and value at 8, 9, 10, and I mean as high as 15 ETH, right? I mean, I remember this collection when it was in the 3 ETH range, and I mean, it wasn't as attractive as it is now. So yeah, there's complexity that exists in the um, triple hash, tri hash, whatever you want to call it. Um, he definitely understands the mechanics of an art drop and traits, etc., that make collecting interesting. So the execution, etc., is still always going to be there with Snowfro. To me, to be honest, there seems to be even more buzz about is maybe the Opepin Snowfro that is incoming. So that one is expected to perform really well, and we could be looking at a 5 ETH plus on that. Of course, that one's going to be challenging to get a hold of because it's um, you know, you get a 200 of 10,000s, whatever that math is, a one in. I think I tried to do kind of the rough math on it, but like a what 1 in 500 shot at getting um, uh, access to the Opepin version of the Chromie Squiggle or Snowfro, sorry. So that one could be interesting as well. But you know, these artists that have a bit of standing, etc., and that could be enough to also get more attention on what Snowfro's done and maybe push a little bit more on the tri hash. But yeah, he's a big avid kind of Formula F1 fan, etc. And this could get some a bit of mainstream adoption in terms of whether it's in some kind of racing side and stuff like that, and act as a bit of a unique item that people brand identify with. So it was definitely attractive at zero point 0.6 and surprising it was that low. I think again the art was so you know basic that maybe it wasn't necessarily you know understood or received in that respect. But it does have meaning in the racing space, etc. But it's interesting, and then the next one that follows it on Velocity Pass, Jack Butcher is also going to be curious to see how that is. Again, Jack Butcher, he seems to hit it in the terms of understanding the narrative and the culture, what's going on, but he also um, does put out a lot. So I'll be really curious to see how that one hits. But I would expect that it's gonna perform as well, if not better than this one.
And that's a collab in between them too, right?
Yes, yeah, it's the final one. I actually thought Snowfro was the final one, so I was mistaken, and it made the call on Velocity Pass, I guess, even that much stronger at the 1 ETH mark, where I think the value that it will deliver over Snowfro and this next coming Jack Butcher collection will produce well.
Yeah, I think they will do well. I mean, the Snow Pro collection, they minted. Well, I guess if you had a Velocity Pass, it was a free mint, right? And then for the other ones, I think it went from point 0.3 and now it's point 0.9 with only 200 items listed. So goes to tell that even during bear market, this art is performing well. That's what we're so excited to hear. What you have been following, and I don't know if that's part of today's topics, but I know a lot of people joined recently, so I'm gonna let others ask questions, or you can take it from here. Whatever you want to do.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate the conversation and kind of spurring it on. Like I said, I went down to Vancouver this weekend. Went to a hockey game and did some traveling, so that was nice. But of course, you take a couple of days off, and it always takes a bit to jump and get right up onto where you want to be in terms of where the market's at and where it's moving. It's been moving fast. But certainly, if you have questions, feel free to interject or in put in chat or talk to me on voice. If not, I will go through a bit of a market overview and just do a bit of a catch up, and then we can kind of talk about some of the other stuff that is going on. So I have been working. I spent a bunch of time Thursday, Friday working on updating some of the floor price index, doing a bit of a better method to capture that, which I think is important, just to be able to get a good gauge on where the market's at. Sometimes you get these random spikes that'll show up in this chart. That's typically just a offset of the sync between the days I'm loading, because I can only load 60 days at a time. And then what happens is I get 2 days loaded on the same day, and then it blows things up. But trending upward, we've had some success in the market. I think the general feeling and consensus on it right now is it's a combination of flooring protocol, which has kind of been buying up a bunch of NFTs and pushing the market a bit, and then with that, kind of pushing market. There's been some energy, and then that energy causes a further move on collections, etc. And we can see that volume has moved up, mainly on Blur. OpenSea is actually down. OpenSea, our art often trades there, and smaller collections, whereas Blur is your primary mainstream collections, as well as a lot of farming. And we got 3 weeks left in the Blur farming that'll will take place, and then the end of season two will hit, and then we got this kind of bit of mystery of what's next for the Blur team and what happens there. But Flooring Protocol, trying to get a better handle on what it is, and ultimately it's a platform that fractionalizes NFTs. So it basically allows you to almost like an index or ETF, kind of buy shares of an NFT, and kind of trade a little bit more liquid instead of owning the full NFT. I guess that's the general feel and consensus on it. Now, it performs well. We'll pull it up, IO. Um, it performs well if there's volume and liquidity in the platform. If there isn't, then you're at bigger risk to not having that liquidity and it not doing as expected. So it's probably going to have 10, maybe a dozen collections. I'm not sure where they're at right now in terms of amount of collections on there, but it's got to be the highest volume collections where it's successful. And certainly, if anyone's got some further details or expert knowledge on flooring, I'd be open to hearing it and discussing it. But I can kind of continue to try to dig in and learn that as it appears to be making an impact, at least in that kind of short term move for collections more recently here in the terms of volume. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest shift. Um, Overall, though, I think apes have been on a bit of a run. The market has kind of responded a little bit to this activity. Generally speaking, the NFT market was in this really, I call it a really good period of consolidation where we weren't necessarily going down anymore, and we were staying pretty stable. And I thought that was a really good sign that maybe we've met our bottom in terms of general sentiment, and now we're making this move. The biggest question now is this move real, or is it a bit of a bull trap and we're gonna kind of regress? I don't see it. Maybe we give back some of these recent gains back to recent levels, but I don't think we kind of continue a greater downward move. So I'm pretty optimistic to what's going on in the NFT space, art in general. Of course, there was a bit of discussion on the Thursday spaces that there was a chart shared out by NFT Stats where art blocks in general they are trending downward. Now, again, that's kind of the natural behavior of NFTs when there isn't volume and liquidity, as people look to sell, right? They look to sell to try and get into the next thing, whether it's the next art project, the next PFP project, or move into crypto or whatever. And as a result, that urge to sell just without liquidity pushes price downward. So NFTs are always quite interesting in that respect, and I'm sure a metric needs to be created that evaluates the the volume or quantity of people looking to sell, and how that's impacting the floor. So for instance, you could have a collection, say Moonwords recently, where you know you have 30, 40 of them that are pushing the floor down in general, but you don't have that many listed because of staking or because of people that are not trying to sell. And all it takes is a shallow move on that collection, and it's gonna uh, present a much better floor increase. And I think that is kind of the bigger gauge of the where a collection is at, is is it just the few that are trying to exit and making that floor look poor, or is it a general overall consensus of pulling down that floor price, right? That's kind of what I think happens with some of these art collections. Is there's a few looking to exit, but overall, new entry of art blocks collections or general success in art has still kind of created some buzz, at least as we see with PFP projects, et cetera. Those first few weeks is where you see the kind of the hype and the kind of the most volatile price action.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, what would you say? Because I know they on your recent post you had um, pointed out a couple of art collections, I guess, art drops that are coming up actually today. There's one, two, three, four, right on the red. One of them being reflections. There's a bunch of other ones. Have you been tracking these ones, or what are you looking at for this current week? If there's anything interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for kind of bringing those up. Um, like I said, I back in the swing of things on a Monday here, so it's can be a catch up over the weekend. So I'd have to pull these up and look at them. Some of them are um, auction, so then they're kind of ongoing. So I don't know if the reflections itself is done, but a lot of these are a curation of upcoming mints, um, kind of taken from other notable sources, and then I go through them and list out the ones I think are most interesting, kind of ones to be on the radar, um, and and ones that kind of stand out. The point one ones here, these are the ones that were part of that kind of fundraising charity kind of event, and some of those had done really pretty well from the point one all the way back up to the like a point two, point three range. But every art collection in general seems to hit pretty well. What's important though is trying to find out, okay, is this a notable artist? Do they have something that kind of supports uh, um, the ability to move, and then also just looking at it and say, okay, is this unique? A lot of it isn't much indifferent to how we would kind of look at a PFP collection and say, okay, is this unique? Does it stand out? Is there something that is a characteristic that's important, or who's behind it, who's kind of influenced in it, and look at it that way. So it's kind of the same principles that you apply when it comes to the art space, but there's maybe a little bit more influence in terms of who's buying it or who's kind of talking about it, so to speak.
Yeah. Sorry, my mic froze here for a second. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Cool. Yeah. No. So no, that's interesting. And I guess let's switch gears to existing collections. I know you mentioned a couple. Um, if you were to to look at what is already in the market, obviously some collections have done very well over the past 6 months, at least Art. What would you be looking at? I think this is a question that Jesse asked you, but when you think about like what Grail Gen Art, right, that has been released over the last couple of years,
Hmm.
what would you be looking at to make an entry here soon, especially if Bitcoin's and crypto in general keeps this uptrend? I think there's going to be a lot of liquidity floating to this collection. So anything that you are keeping your eyes on for a potential entry?
There's a few that I think are quite interesting. I mean, they are probably some of the more well known, more mainstream, and as such, probably on the higher end, right? So we mentioned it earlier. We talked about Snowfro. Snowfro has been pretty active here recently, but Chromie Squiggles, I think, really are the kind of staple to what is Gen Art, and I believe they hold a part of significance. So they're less than 8 or in that 8 ETH range at the moment. I think they belong above 10 and should appreciate um, beyond that. So and they held 10 for quite some time. So they're one that on the higher end side of things that I think stand out. Uh, Back to Windsor Yawanawa, I think it's down back to I think 6.5. There was a Machi dump that we talked about where anything in that farming kind of realm it provides that additional risk. But I believe that that piece is going to continue to to grab hold of attention. So those are two on the higher ends. I would lean Chromie Squiggles above of anything there, at least in terms of safety, stability, and as that market moves up, they're going to be something that people kind of move towards. And then on the kind of mid range, another collection I think that has performed well and has been very stable and has a really good following is uh, Memories of Chilin. Um, uh, Kind of I think one that I would look at. I'm just going to see where they're currently at. So about the 3.2 range. Been in that range for a good duration of time. Also, I think uh, a really interesting um, site specifically for art and art process is article.io. They have a pretty good filtering mechanism to be able to look at art specific as well as across some of the main platforms, Bright Moments, Art Blocks, GM Studio, etc., which allows you to kind of look at those collections and what's kind of trending. It does give you, 24-hour, even 15-minute, and then it also has PFPs in here as well. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
cool
that's very cool.
website that I've played around with a bit. It does have a paid version and a free version. I think the free version gives you a really good look at um, what's going on, and you can look at it over a longer time frame as well to what's seeing volume or what collections are doing. So it's kind of cool. And then they do have some pretty interesting, it looks like, mechanics or analytics that they apply on the premium version as well. That maybe something that attracts me in the near future here to check out. But
Yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna check it out. Didn't know about this website, so looks like they organize things very cleanly. Um, all right. Well, I don't know if anyone else has questions. I actually wanted to ask you about the NFT market per se, like the PFP market. So obviously we see the apes above 30. I think the captains went up 40% after the meme coin drop, etc. Well, meme coin. So is there anything you're looking at here for the next couple of weeks to do well, or nothing at all?
Um, I had been staring and watching kind of some of the challenges that are going on with D gods and Utes, trying to figure out, where that slide exists and then where that point of recovery is. So, a lot of collections have done pretty well, and you can see as we look at Blur, some of the captains up 33% on the week, mutants up 15, apes up 15, kennel up 15. So you're seeing some pretty solid moves and gains. Typically, when that's occurring, it's not a bad idea to look at where some of the most FUD has existed, or some of the kind of the greatest declines exist, and then kind of try to kind of trade an oversell on those collections. So Milady, kind of a really good example of that previously, where they had kind of some issues with a dev and et cetera, and it brought a lot of questions into you know Milady's as a whole, and whether or not they were gonna kind of sustain. As a result, declined pretty dramatically, and they've now made a 40% move upward from 1.75 up to 2.5. Now, I wouldn't say Milady's are the ones you want to be jumping in at this point, but like I said, I'm curious to Utes and more so D gods to where do they level off of. There's a lot going on right now with Frank and where does that collection exist? And I don't know if they have that identity anymore, moving from Solana to ETH, etc. But you can see that significant sell off, and you know, are they the collection that starts to move next? I'm not sure the time is there, but that's one I've been watching really closely. Um, Probably too closely because it's kind of capturing my attention more often than not as I'm sitting there staring at it all the time. Doodles may stand out a bit as well. They're up 11%, so they're kind of moving up with the market. We don't know when Doodles are gonna you know come up with something significant. There's always been that persistent wait, almost to the fact that where Doodles almost feel like they've kind of fallen into irrelevance because there just hasn't been anything really from them for such a long amount of time. So that one's kind of curious. And then Cool Cats, I think, also kind of stand out as you know, there's been a bit of a flight to some of these OG collections, and uh, they've seen some success. So I'm curious to whether or not Cool Cats can capture any of that attention, or if there's anything in the behind the scenes in the terms of whether Cool Cats is in acquisition or partnership mode that I think might be something that they would need for a real strong catalyst. So curious to what anyone else might be looking at, or want to talk about, discuss about. What's really impressive, but about this recent gain is the fact that um, crypto in general has been strong, and usually, at least through the bear market, when crypto has performed strong, a lot of the floor prices retract to kind of balance out that U.S. price. I would look at that, in the terms of the long term trend of the bear market is that most often a lot of holders and collections were looking for exits, and as a result, they're always trying to price and sell at a maximized U.S. dollar price. As I think we've shaken out a lot of the people that have wanted to sell or reduce their positions in NFTs, and we've seen that consolidation and stability in the NFT indexes. I think now we're at a point now where a lot of the people that are holding are in it a little bit more long term, and that's why we're not seeing necessarily a repricing of collections along with ETH moving up. And in fact, we've seen some appreciation as people have kind of, I think, been waiting for an opportunity across the market. So it's quite a interesting shift overall.
Definitely. And the good part is we have IO Focus here. I don't know if he's available to speak, but just so in the chart of ETH, I'm sure he's able to speak more about it. And he's working on a pretty cool tool for some of our whale members. So I wonder if actually, I don't know if you have any comments, but the actual trend, right? Like even at the beginning of the previous bull market, right? I don't think maybe some of the existing collections do suffer, but even with price appreciation on crypto, I wonder how much that really affects some of these collections, right? Because most of these are 60 to 80% down, right? So how much,
Yeah,
even if, right, even if we go up,
yeah.
go ahead.
Good question. Good question. Big picture. Go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry. Yeah, geez,
No, 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 I was going to say like normally what Rhodes, mentioned actually plays out, which is crypto goes up, USD price and NFTs kind of like almost reprices, then people sell on that pump, right? But right now, with if we enter in a new whatever crypto summer and this uptrend continues, I wonder how many of those holders will still try to flip versus hold. Because when you're seeing like obviously collections like 40 Jack Club, right? You're seeing that as floor price appreciates, there's not like many more listings at that level to almost kind of like take advantage of the pump. We're seeing actually people delisting, right? So then this this trend of price appreciation and less supply will continue the upward pressure on floor price, which is what we saw on the previous, right before the previous bull market, right? So I wonder, yes, part of what you said is true, but I wonder if at this time will be different. But I will let you guys discuss it.
Yeah, I don't have too much time here, but on that same note, like a question I had for Roach was um, having to do with price appreciation. Say, like for example, something that's low floor price like Parallel Alpha, that's a game, but it has a lot of high volume. You look at it, like, would you see that going, being a good investment long term, just on price appreciation alone? Say ETH as an asset.
One thing that
And
that
on a new project, have you looked at like Mitchell, the Explorer Club, Mitchell? Yeah, I think they launched this month in October.
yeah, I both are interesting discussions for totally different reasons. For me, first parallel alpha, I think Alpha Pass and their primary OG collection is interesting as they continue to develop that game. I don't believe their additional assets, etc., are necessarily an ideal get, just given the fact that they're continuously introducing more supply into the ecosystem, which I think is a risk point. But I think the Alpha Pass is can be interesting if that game is successful. Gaming to me isn't an area that I am super confident in terms of my knowledge, as I'm not necessarily a big gamer. So I can't speak to how something like this could um, succeed, right? Because gaming is what's more important to my understanding than anything else is it's got to be fun. It's got to be a game that's addictive, and when that occurs and the game is successful and it gets adoption by more than just crypto folk trying to make money, then you have a product and something that's successful that could really take off. So supply is my concern with Parallel, but I think that Alpha Pass, as they continue to seemingly perform, I think that's interesting. When it comes to Michelin, it's a big brand entering the space. I haven't heard anything from them that says they are providing anything unique or interesting of value, and that they're really in the space to try and be in the space. I don't know. It doesn't seem like what they're going to present or the value proposition of it is going to produce anything significant, and I wouldn't place my bet there.
Okay, thanks. That clears that up. That clears that up. And the last wish list I'd have, if I can make one, is I use sometimes this decentralized perpetual exchange, Apex, but they also have a NFT collection, and the whole utility of it is it's all the whole collection is burned. The NFT is called like Apex Predator, I believe. Sometime if you could maybe possibly look at the official collection and try to work through some of those metrics.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to me, NFTs, they kind of fall in a few categories, right? So, PFP, you're buying the PFP really for the utility of the PFP. That's what it boils down to. Of course, there's all kinds of additional considerations, etc. But that's what a PFP collection comes down to, right? And in art, again, you're buying it for the collection of art and the potential appreciation of art, given the narrative behind it and what that artist continues to do. And then utility, straight to the utility and that unique value that it provides. So utility is always attractive. I think some utility projects though have kind of fleeting value, because if they're kind of the tool of the moment, etc., then they can perform really well. But then when they're not, then there's a bit of risk there. So like, if I were to think where maybe say NFT nerds is in that NFT kind of pass, things like that. but if they're introducing an interesting mechanic in terms of burn, etc., then that becomes a bit more interesting in terms of a consideration. So, yeah. King, you got something to say? Are you trying to talk, King, and no one's hearing you? I've seen you come off mute a couple times, and I'm waiting for it, but
Hey, well, thanks, Rose. You sound good. You look good. I appreciate everything.
thank you very much.
How's that?
There we go. Now we got you.
I was just thinking, well, one thing I wanted to ask you about was Sugartown.
Yeah.
Figures IO left because this was for him too. But maybe after the space on Thursday, we do a Discord like live session, and during the space we can invite people from the other communities into it. You know what I'm saying? So
Um,
maybe like 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. Thursday. You and I do Discord like live trading, host questions and stuff, and but just mention it during the space.
I love the idea. Unfortunately, I'm not available until later on Thursday, and in fact, Thursday once I get yeah, Thursdays are tough. So I'm in the office Tuesday through Thursday. I've got a blocked out hour for the Thursday Twitter discussion,
All right,
but
cool.
beyond that,
Well,
I don't have.
he said he would do it. He
Yeah,
said he would do it. So
I think it's a
think it's
really
good. So
yeah I think it's a really good idea and a really smart idea because you get
just something to like get people in
yeah
there
yeah
and then show them what we got.
exactly you got that many people engaged from the discussion and just kind of
Yeah.
carry that momentum over is a really good idea.
All right, cool. So we'll set that up. So what do you think about Sugartown then? I at least I got to play all three of their beta,
Okay,
like alpha, beta, gamma. Got to play all three events. I won one Aura.
nice.
One of the events.
Yeah,
I was 16th overall on this last one, and now like at 9 o'clock I gotta go play this stupid putt putt thing in Discord. It's like a Discord voice game that you play,
yeah.
and it's like putt putt golf. But I gotta try to play that to win into something else. But
In-
we'll see.
Interesting. So first, how you've been finding the gaming so far? Fun or
It's definitely fun. It's one of the best ones I think I've played, and I mean I started just only going after gaming project.
mm-hmm, perfect. I mean, as I talked about parallel, etc., that gaming presents a significant amount of risk. The failure rate of new games is pretty high to my understanding. But when you get something that is backed by Zynga and track record of some of the games that they've been able to produce and been successful with, if you were to bet on a game, um, other than the other side where I think that's kind of a interesting, unique experience, I think Sugartown is one that I think has the ability to to get some mass adoption and be successful. So I've been pretty positive towards it. And really, what you want to look at for that is, as you get closer to uh, the rollout of the game, etc., that's where this collection becomes even more favorable to collect. Um, they've done well, right? So free mint all the way up to 0.28 range at a high.
I
Um,
think it was point four.
point
What was
four.
it?
Okay.
It was like point four or something at the top.
Let's see if I can go
It could,
go further back here.
it could be 2.8.
No, you
I could have swore they were a .4 at one point.
there have been some spikes.
But it's
There we go.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's the same game so far. The first two groups, um, you got in by staking your auras early. And then it was like the last group, if you were in the first two groups, you couldn't play. But I won one of their poker games, so I got to play anyway.
Nice.
I might have won. I might have won another aura in this round for fastest to reach level 100. But they have to go through all that and announce it.
Nice. Yeah, so point 0.4 was their peak. And that was a pretty good straight run from when they launched. So what was it? Basically within the first week, it looks like that they made that move. The reveal was a pretty good size pullback. I know I talked about it. Probably I think it was on a Thursday space where and it was kind of just occurring at the time. We were doing that space where I thought that they were maybe a bit oversold. I was pretty surprised that they dropped as much as they did because I thought the overall the art was pretty good and effective. I think some of the feedback was that they were too close to beans, which I mean, I don't know what's really wrong with that. And to me, they don't seem like they're beans either. Um, but at the time, they were about 0.18. They did move back up to 0.23, where they've now kind of faded off again. Again, I think they're going to perform probably pretty well once the game gets closer to full launch and the overall um, mechanics, etc., like that is understood. Um, but it seems like you're getting pretty positive rewards out of playing it, etc., and winning an aura has I'm sure has been um, pretty profitable return. So yeah, I think it's a one of the better bets in terms of the gaming side of things for sure. And I'm optimistic that it can be one that maybe provides um, that first real injection of success in terms of NFT gaming.
Yeah, like I'm feeling like this could be the one that really bridges the gap, between gaming and Web3 gaming.
Yeah, yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
we'll see. And I mean, they're gonna have another game coming out. I would say it's gonna be next week.
Yeah,
So it's just they seem to be throwing stuff down in front of everybody.
cool.
But, but yeah, we'll see. See what happens. But I mean, whatever the first game is that really breaks through and like bridges the gap, it's just, I would have to imagine that's going to do very well.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, I mean, it's Zynga. So,
Yeah.
give me Farmville that I can play with NFTs.
Yeah,
I'll play.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
As long as it's more accessible than other side, right? Because what it looks like is, I mean, other side technically is a bit more of a exclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play the game, and we'll see what happens, right? Because the game hasn't actually launched, but if you want to own one of these deeds, right? I mean, technically, are probably now not too far off, right? But these deeds start appreciating in price. I wonder how the accessibility is going to be for your average gamer, right? Because these are not cheap assets, right? I mean, the floor ones might not be super cheap, but I think about the reason why games are successful, as King was saying too, is obviously you have to have a brand, but it's also how do you get people to play the game, right? And you have to make it first of all free, and you have to make it fun and interesting, right? So I think part of these NFT gated games are going to have a hard time, right? Regardless of how much funding they have, to really onboard Web2 gamers. Because one, yes, the incentives might be more interesting, but it's also the whole adoption curve, right? Most people play a game for a little bit and they get tired. So for a game to be like a Fortnite or like a Call of Duty, whatever, you have to really kind of like cross that, that those first, I don't know what it is, 5 6 months of like playable experience where people are hooked to the game and they want to keep playing it, right? So it can be a next farming or whatever you want, but if the price point is too expensive, you won't have a lot of people playing it. You just have 10,000 people playing it maximum, and that's not really what you want to do when you want a game to be successful globally, right? So it's going to be interesting, right? NFTs are only heard of by hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe a handful of million of people are actually interested in NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make a game successful around NFTs? You probably don't mention the word NFT, and then you put it on their wallets, and they're like, "Hey, you actually can trade this and make money." And they're like, "Oh, this actually belongs to us, not to the game maker, right?" Because that's pretty what happens, right? All the profit goes unless you trade on secondary. I really don't know what happens with skins. I've never really played, but most of the money really goes back to the gaming company. Whereas as an NFT holder, you kind of like have that uh, ability to buy and sell your assets, right? So just offering some perspective, because the truth is making a game is extremely difficult whether you have a budget or not. I think more than having a budget is who cares about this game, right? I hope people care about Sugar Town. I really hope they care about other side. Otherwise, we're just holding very expensive JPEGs that might be worth nothing in the future. But we'll see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely will see. I mean, at this point, it's hard to tell. There's definitely some people holding them just for the money aspect of it, but then there's also other people looking at, the possibilities of what could come from Zynga. I guess, like that's what I'm looking at. Like they could come out with some game that everybody loves, and there, boom, bridges the gap.
Yeah,
Uh, who knows?
and they have already the audience, right? So it's just
Yeah, yeah.
it
But
really comes down
that's
to how do you onboard people without making it very hard to onboard, right? Like the friction levels have to be
yeah. You can't like here buy this game for $2,200, and
yeah.
you can play. But that's another thing. It's like they minted 6,000 and they kept 4,000. I'm gonna say something like that. So they kept 4,000 to onboard new players because when it comes to Zynga, it's like 10,000 people don't play their games. Billions of
Mm-hmm.
people play their games. So it's like, how are they gonna fit them millions of people into these games when there's only 10,000 NFTs?
I this
Maybe the playable version of it is supposed to be enabled for hundreds of thousands of people, right? When they did the demos, right? You could delegate wallets. Technically you should be able to allow hundreds of thousands of people to play at the same time, right? I really don't know how it's going to work on a scale basis, but it's I guess we're immutable, and I guess the team behind what they're building on the other side is building towards the scalability, but then again, you're trying to win the audience, right? So you're a pioneer in the Web3 space, but you have to it's like a blue ocean. You have to bring the audience from Web 2, and I think that has an advantage because you are the first mover, but it also has a ton of like again friction, right? You really have to convince people to move from one way of doing things to the other, and I think that's probably the most difficult, whether it's gaming or DeFi or whatever, right? Just getting people to switch what they're comfortable with and that learning curve. So we'll see. It has to be enticing. I think the way to do this, and we discussed this with um, TFG and a bunch of guys are big in the gaming space here, is you have to get the streamers, the professional gamers to to um to start playing those games, right? And then once they start playing those games, they start streaming them, and then they start getting people on boarded. Obviously, they have to be incentivized. So whether you gotta sponsor events, maybe where they pay these gamers, and you get to open a
Cohen.
stadium or something cool, where people go to see these games, kind of like what they do with Fortnite. And then that's how you onboard masses, right? You're not gonna be able to reach these people by email or by Discord. You're going to need to have massive events, right? Digital metaverse, whatever you want to call them, right? Where people can go tune in and see how it works, see their favorite players, play this game, and then maybe you have a chance of being successful. But anyways, I went on a ramp here. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, I was like, I've been spending really since King brought up Sugartown, just trying to think, okay, how does it translate from 6,000 or 10,000 NFTs to hundreds of thousands of players, and I'm assuming that auras are maybe a multiplier in the terms of how the mechanics work in game. Right. So if you think of a lot of mobile gaming, they usually, you're buying some kind of currency to be able to speed things up. And maybe if you have the Aura NFT, then, activity happens for you 40, 50% faster, whatever the case may be. I'm not sure what what version of utility they give to the NFTs to allow that to be successful, but also to allow, mainstream players to play the game as well and kind of drive it, right?
One that I works with Senga and Sugar Town, but I think with the other side is everyone will be able to play, right? And then those that hold these are the ones that are essentially, kind of like reaping the
Hmm.
benefits of whoever plays, right? So it's like real estate and right investors. You
Yeah.
actually have the real estate, so someone can buy a portion of your real estate, or they can help you enhance it, right? That's how I see it. Or maybe there's not penalties, but there's actually some sort of like taxation system in ApeCoin, right? Where I really don't know how the game's going to work, but I'm just get creative where you pass through these deeds, and some of these ones are chaos land, right? Like they might actually be able to teleport you in between deeds because there's like hundreds of thousands of deeds, right, or whatever. And so if you want to go from one way to the other, if you want to save time, maybe you can pay a fee in ApeCoin and jump from one to the other, right? Or farm here or there, get resources. Everyone will still be able to play the game for very cheap, if not free. And then as you upgrade, either if you want to be a landlord, right, real estate owner, or if you want to be an investor, you might be able to participate in that way. But that's my thought.
Yeah, that's definitely freaking pretty cool. Uh, Imagine that you have one deed that's in a good spot that people want to go to, and you can just charge them like 5 ApeCoin every time they want to teleport there.
Yeah, I think that should be one of the use cases. But again, I think there's a bunch of things in the works. But anyways, Rhodes, I didn't want to take your thunder, man. Please, I don't know if you want to close it up or if you want to chat about something else, but take it on, man.
That's mostly what I had to go through, and I think we got a lot of extra great discussion going on. I have a son that's downstairs that is doing his own thing that I should probably check on to make sure he's doing all right. It's been kind of quiet downstairs, so I'm going to, unless there's any other questions, wrap it up, go check on him, and then finish up my day. But I appreciate the thought and discussion, and it was a lot of fun. And as I said, getting back to the fresh week here, we'll continue on the content space side of things, as I think things are really starting to move, and it's exciting. So that's cool.
If it's quiet, you better go check.
He just made noises, a little bit of crying, which I think is positive. So, I was thinking maybe he fell asleep because he was looking pretty tired. He hasn't been feeling super well, but no, he's making noise, so I know he's alive, but he's also crying. So,
My sister,
Yeah,
my
the thing
sister
is,
just had a baby on Friday,
oh
so
yeah,
we went up to grandma's this weekend and then stopped by her place. Tiny little thing, like oh man, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. Kids are fun.
yeah. So Rhodes, I was thinking that so we have the Thursday spaces, right? So I think that would be good for overall. But maybe it would be good to have maybe another quick 30 minute to 45 maybe minute like session on Wednesday or something. Maybe a different time. I don't know what works for your schedule, but so that other members can tune in. Obviously this is a time where it looks like it's small. It's also Monday, pre Halloween. Probably people are traveling, but
Yeah,
a lot of people I know traveling to ApeFest this week actually, so it might be a slower week. But if there's something interesting on your radar, maybe something we can cover. Definitely very interested in seeing Gen art, specifically PFPs. I think we have the top 10 that I'm looking at, but definitely wanting to participate more in your posts because I've seen some of those and I'm like, damn, some of those I definitely should have played them out because they've done very well. So
Hmm.
if that's something that you could do, maybe like Wednesday or even like Friday, but another time zone.
Yeah,
Time.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. Fridays are definitely another day I have more time. So if we can do some stuff on Fridays for sure. Um, yeah, that would be good.
Perfect. Well, thanks for your time, man. Look forward to
Awesome.
the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'll post up this recording as well for those that couldn't be there. And we'll catch you again next time.
Thanks a lot, man.
See you later. Cheers.